Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Office Add-ins community call. Here we're going to talk about everything that is coming up in the Office 365 platform. We've got a packed agenda today. We are going to be sharing with you the latest in Excel shortcut customization, an update from the SSO space in Office, and the latest about Outlook event-based add-ins on Mac. So my name is Alex. I'll be the host of the call today. If you have any questions, type them into the chat. We'll get to them either during the Q&A portion, or we have members of the product team on the call who can answer them as we go. So without further ado, Abid, are you ready to talk about Excel shortcut customizations?
Yes, thank you, Alex.
Sure. Yeah, please take over when you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abid. I'm here to talk about some of the new shortcut APIs that we have that is available now for public preview. So before I get started here, I'm going to do a quick summary of what shortcuts are. So hopefully you've been able to use shortcuts over the last couple of months, but essentially keyboard shortcuts are a way to assign shortcut combinations to any add-in actions that you have. So this is talking about just in Excel for now. And you can use keyboard shortcuts to do many actions, anything that your add-in can do already today. So things like opening and closing the task pane, fetching data for the current cell, applying any kind of formatting to a cell, or opening a dialog or resetting settings or anything within the runtime of your add-in. So this capability has been out now for about 6 months. If you have any questions about keyboard shortcuts or you haven't been able to try them out, please do go ahead and click on the links on this slide. We have a sample up, a short PNP that shows you how keyboard shortcuts work, and as well as our documentation for keyboard shortcuts. But the main reason I'm here today is to talk about some of our customization APIs that we are now introducing for public preview. So there are 3 new APIs that are coming out. And all of these are going to be part of the new Keyboard Shortcuts 1.1 requirement set. So if you have any questions about, hey, what versions of Excel can I use this requirement set for? Go ahead and click that requirement set link in the slide, and it will give you exact details on where this is available. But for folks that are excited to use this, let's go ahead and talk about each of these and how they can help you manage the set of shortcuts that you may have for your add-in. All right. I went backwards. Here we go. All right. The very first API we have is called Replace Shortcuts. So essentially, this is the bulk of customization. This allows you to change that shortcut combination that you may have defined in your extended manifest file, right? So your extended manifest file is the file that you're linking in your manifest that includes your original set of all the different shortcut combinations. Now you can use office.actions.replace shortcuts, and all you do is feed it that action ID and any new shortcut combination that you would like to replace whatever you have had in the extended manifest file. The small caveat here is that you can't create new shortcuts on the go, right? So you can only customize the shortcuts that you have already previously defined in your manifest. And the value that you put into this API, it has to be a string that defines that custom shortcut combination. So you can see in the example here, we are changing the combinations for the show task pane and hide task pane actions to Control-Shift-1 and Control-Shift-2. And it's a very simple API call, and you can send in a whole list of shortcut customizations at once. One thing I do want to call out is this is going to be saved per user, per platform. So if you are calling this operation for a certain user that is already logged into Office, we're going to be saving it in that user's roaming settings. So if they go from one Windows machine to another Windows machine, they will have these customizations there for them. But they are saved per platform. So that means if they're switching from Windows to web, you will need to call this customization API again to make sure that you're synced across the different platforms. And then the main reason for that is there are some small areas where web has different shortcuts than Windows. So we want to make sure that flexibility is still there for you to account for that. And then the last thing is the value that you send in, the actual shortcut combination. It can also be null. And what that does is just remove any previous customizations that you may have set for that shortcut action. So this is probably the API that you'll be using the most. Replace shortcuts. If you have any questions, do let us know in the chat. The second API that we are introducing is get shortcuts, right? So you can imagine that as you're making these customizations for your user, you want to know exactly what customizations this user has made in the past, and then be able to actually show that to the user, or at least use that for your own information. So what get shortcuts is going to do is going to essentially just return to you every single shortcut that the current user can currently use, right? So this can change over the course of the lifetime that the user is using your add-in. Of course, things can happen. So for example, if a shortcut conflicts with other add-ins and they see that small conflict dialog pop up and they choose to disable the shortcut for your add-in, the value that's returned with that action is going to be null. Because right now there's no shortcut combination the user can use to invoke that action, right? So this list is going to return everything that the user can currently use as shortcut combinations. The second source that you can be getting information from is if you have previously used that replace shortcuts API to customize a shortcut, this get shortcuts API is going to return any new customized shortcuts for this user. And then, of course, the third option is if there has been no conflicts and there has been no customizations, it will essentially just return back to you whatever you have defined in that extended manifest JSON file. But the main goal here is to make it easy for you to create some kind of UI to tell the user, hey, these are the shortcuts that you have available right now. This is what you can use to invoke the actions in the add-in. And so you can use this get shortcuts method for every user to create that UI that you have. And then the third new API that we're introducing is our shortcuts in use. So this is going to be very helpful for most of you that are trying to avoid any shortcuts that either Excel is already using in terms of native shortcuts, or there may be other add-ins that your users have that also has other shortcuts that you want to avoid conflicts with. So essentially, you can send in a whole list of shortcut combinations to first check, hey, is this shortcut already in use by this user? And if so, then you can avoid using that shortcuts as part of your replace shortcuts method. And you can incorporate this into your UI as well. If you have some kind of customization UI where you want to ask the user for a shortcut combination that they want to customize, you can go ahead and first check using this API to see, hey, is there a conflict with the shortcut? And if so, then let your users know, like, hey, can you please pick a different shortcut because this one is already in use. And this is just meant to be a quick check that can help you avoid those conflicts in the future. All right, so those are the three main APIs that we are introducing as part of the Keyboard Shortcuts 1.1 requirement set. We do have a short demo to go through all of these with you, so I'd like to invite the engineers that have been working so hard on these three APIs, Nicole and HJ. So Nicole, please feel free to share your screen and do the short demo if you're ready here.
Okay, thank you, Abid. Let me show my screen. So hi, I'm Nicole. I'm one of the engineers that worked on this together with HJ, and today I'll be demoing the shortcuts and the customization API. So here I've opened a sample data set, and I will go ahead and, for example, we can select these dates and we can press the shortcut here. We can set the date format by pressing Control-Shift-D, and that will change the date format. Or we can try a different shortcut, such as set color by pressing Control-Shift-O, and it will change the color of the selected grid. Let's say we can also select some text over here and do underline by doing Control-Shift-U. However, there will be a conflict. So we can go ahead and press on Get Shortcuts in Use, which will tell us that currently Control 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 are not in use. So we can go ahead and replace those shortcuts by pressing the Replace Shortcuts button. And now set italic will become Control-Shift-5. Sorry, set underline will be Control-Shift-6. So we can go ahead and do Control-6, and then we'll underline the text. And I also want to show that this setting will persist over in the new workbook. So we can go ahead and close this workbook and open up a new blank workbook. And wait a little for the sample to insert. And then we can press Control-7, which is to open up the task pane. If we do get shortcuts, you can see that the old settings from the customization from the previous workbook will persist over here. And if we want to revert back to the old setting, we can simply press Reset Shortcut. This operation takes a little while, so we're going to give it a few seconds. And we can do Get Shortcuts again. Sorry, still in the middle. There we go. And then you can see that all the settings have reverted back to before. And if we press Control-Shift down, it will also again show you the conflict, and then we can hide the dialog, and then it will go away. And so that would be the demo of the sample add-in with the customization API. And if we look at the code behind it, so I'd like to point out the replace shortcut, reset shortcut, and the print shortcut in use. So over here we have, for replace shortcut, we simply set in a function with a loop over here, assigning control with a number into it. And the replace shortcut takes an array of shortcut key and will assign it to the shortcut to replace it. And as for reset shortcut, as mentioned in the slides as well, we simply need to set the shortcut to be null, and it will revert back to the original change. As well as shortcut in use, we'll simply just get the shortcut over here and then pass it into our shortcuts in use, and then we'll return an array of Boolean of whether or not that shortcut is being used. And I think that concludes the demo. Please let me know if there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you for that demo, Nicole. Abhi, do you want to finish off the section?
Awesome. So just to end off here, so as I mentioned, this Keyboard Shortcuts 1.1 is currently in preview. So that means this is the time for everyone else to please try it out, play around with it. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. If there's any issues, it gives us the chance to fix it. So for GA, we expect to include any of the bug fixes that we find, but you can expect there to not be any major design changes here. I think we are well aligned on the 3 different APIs that we have. So if you have any feedback, let us know. If you have any bugs, please let us know, and feel free to post them in that GitHub repo that I have linked on this slide. So thank you, everyone. That was it for keyboard shortcut customization here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Abhi. And I believe in the chat there were some questions around supporting other hosts such as Word. Is that currently in the roadmap, or are we waiting on preview phase to kind of see how things go?
Yes, that's correct, Alex. So I believe HJ had an answer there. We don't have a plan to extend this for Word or PowerPoint at the moment, but if that is something you want, let us know. Of course, the whole reason we started this for Excel was we had such a high demand from everyone in the developer community. So if you want to see this go on to Word and PowerPoint, please let us know through the chat and through other means of communication here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll share all those different means of communication at the end of the call and through the follow-up blog post. So move on to SSO updates for Office. So Matt, are you ready?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, again.
That's wonderful. I have one slide. So if you just want to click over, beautiful. Thank you so much, Alex. Hi, everyone. Matt Geimer. Hope you're doing as amazing as you can today. I have a couple updates I'd like to share for single sign-on, specifically for Office on the web, but we'll talk a little bit more broadly about single sign-on as well, just for a second. So we GA'd back, I think it was like 18, 20 months ago, maybe almost 2 years. We've been seeing some great usage. Thank you so much for folks that are utilizing single sign-on. It really provides your users a smooth experience when facing authentication, and it's really nice to see, again, the uptake we've had. So thank you, first of all. Moving forward, we are working on a new set of documentation that will hopefully make it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for That update should be coming soon. Right now, I'm working with the very talented David Chestnut and myself to try and bring that out here very quickly. So if you are thinking about getting started with single sign-on, the documentation should be updated here in the next few weeks with some pretty helpful additions. Something's changing though, which is Office on the Web, the SSO service that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint only, on the web only. We're changing the service. So right now there's a token service for when you call get access token. It goes and fetches the token from AAD on your behalf and returns it to your add-in. That service doesn't work in all of our endpoints. And we know that support for all the places that Office on the web is, like office.com, is really important. So we've got this new service we're rolling out. It does require a change on your end to continue utilizing SSO if you have SSO enabled. So there's just a call out here. There is a new client ID. The client ID is listed there. There is a blog post up already with details that just went live a little bit ago. So if you have SSO and you're using it, just be aware you will need to add this additional ID in your pre-authorizations. And that is in our documentation. The new ID's in there as well. I made sure that was in, I think, right before the holidays. So you may have done it already. Reminder that this does not impact anything with desktop or Outlook, but it is really important to get that new client ID, because if you don't, SSO for Office on the Web will use this new service starting the week of February 7th. And in doing so, your users will then have to go back to that fallback method, which obviously is not as ideal if you have SSO already implemented. This client ID, you'll see there's a note there below it that there's a grouping that actually includes all the other groupings, because this was part of the desktop client grouping, that EA5 client ID at the bottom. So we've actually just gone ahead and made sure that we can have the appropriate IDs reflected in that group. So if you've already pre-authorized that client ID at the bottom, then you should be good. But feel free, again, if you want, you can go ahead and make sure they're all listed in your application registration. And finally, if you want to test before we switch over, we've added a new auth option called Enable New Hosts. And that's something that we're going to be using moving forward to just allow things like this, where we have a new service or new options, and we want to make sure that folks have a moment to test. So feel free to use that in your auth options, and it will use the new service already before this switch over. One of the things that's nice is that if you leave it in there, you shouldn't see any issues when we do switch over, because it will be the default. It should be safe to use, but ideally this should be for testing only. Documentation is still being updated on that specific piece. Apologies, we haven't been able to publish it yet, but again, the blog post shows the same thing. And yeah, that's pretty much most of it. Just want to give this update. We're really excited to continue to bring support. We're working on places like add-ins that are used in Office inside of Teams and other places. So we're still working to bring out more support where folks use add-ins. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll happy to answer any questions in the chat. I know that we do get quite a few auth questions from time to time, so I'll be on the call for another 30 minutes or so, or until it's over. So happy to answer anything.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. Yeah, SSO is a important area for a lot of people. So yeah, any questions you have, this is a great opportunity to have some one-on-one time with Matt in the chat. All right, so going forward, let's now talk about the new event-based add-in activation for Outlook on Mac. So Ashima, are you on the call?
Yes, thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this call, and I hope you're all doing well. I had some updates to share on the 1.10 APIs and event-based add-ins on Mac. So last time that I was on this call, we had shared that we were in insiders, and the good news is that now Mailbox 1.10 APIs and event-based add-ins are in GA. The minimum version for the new Outlook for Mac is 16.54. And this is supported again on the new Outlook for Mac. So you need to toggle on that switch on the new Outlook, and that's when these capabilities will start working. I'll do a quick recap that when we talk about the new 1.10 APIs, this covers the signature APIs that we have, which includes the set signature async to set signatures on Mail Compose or Event Compose, the get compose type async, which will allow you to ascertain the compose mode of an email, Is client signature enabled async to know whether an Outlook native signature is already enabled or not, and a disabled client signature async to disable the native signature and insert the signature from the add-in. We also have insight notification, which will allow you to show a clickable info bar or a clickable notification on the mail or event compose areas. And that's where the users can actually click on it and it can open the task pane for the users to take more actions on top of it. You can refer to the documentation around this in the API requirements set 1.10. And for the event-based add-ins, the events that are available on Outlook for Mac today are on New Message Compose and on New Appointment Organizer. So these are the two events available today. We are presently working on the 1.11 APIs, and that should also be coming up pretty soon for you. There are two known issues that we have on Mac for the event-based add-ins, which is that if a signature API passes HTML in a complex form, it was causing the API to break. And also if there was an issue in the clickable info bar not working in certain scenarios. So we've checked into fixes for it. And in the Jan prod release, you should see those working fine. So we should have the Jan prod release coming up early next week. So would request you all to update to the latest builds and test out your add-ins on top of that. I have a short demo to share in terms of the signature API add-ins. So I'll play that out. And this is a signature add-in that we have built in-house for the demo. So it allows the users to specify their signature. So this kind of opens up the task pane where users can add their signature details. And when they do save it, it'll allow them to choose different templates. So, for a new mail, there can be one template. For a reply scenario, there can be another template. And forward can have a completely different template. And this is overriding the Outlook signatures that we have natively. So once this is set and a new mail is kind of opened, then the signatures will auto-run. And this is using the on-compose auto event for mail compose. And similarly, it'll work for the selected templates will work for the reply and for the forward scenarios. So this is using both the 1.10 signature APIs along with the on-compose events. There are also some other scenarios that we wanted to kind of talk about, or some things that you could explore. For example, attachments. There is a scenario that add-ins could nudge users to use cloud storage if attachment size exceeds certain limits. So this can again run on compose, check for attachments. The add-in can auto launch, check the attachments, and then nudge the user. So this can be more of like a smart compose scenarios that you can enable. Also for online meetings, in the event compose, there are certain interesting scenarios where you could nudge users during the meeting creation, or you could update meeting invites at real time if the user makes any changes. So it can open an add-in from the notification itself, or it could nudge the users without opening the add-in and make the entire experience smarter for those users. And you could also fetch item details without actually invoking the add-in or waiting for the user to invoke the add-in. And based on that, dynamically your add-in can launch into different things. So it's very, very exciting capability, and we do think this will unlock a lot of new scenarios even beyond what we have thought of or presented. So we'd be very happy for you to explore this further and share any new scenarios or any new requests you might have for us around this. Yeah, that's it from me, Alex. Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you very much, Ashma. Cool, awesome to see parity between Mac and other platforms and just the new scenarios this unlocks. All right, so that's it for the new stuff on the call. Really quickly, we want to do our community spotlight and shout out some people who have been helping out in our patterns and practices and our code samples. So thank you to Legault and Maarten van Stam for their help there. Your work really makes it possible for our code samples to be more relevant to people and to understand what is going on out in the community. So thank you very much. If you'd like to help out as well, head on over to the Office Dev PnP Office Add-ins repo. There we have most of our code samples, our larger code samples. We're always in need of people giving their feedback, testing them out, or contributing their own scenarios to it. So we have some questions that came in through the form that we have for this call. So our first one is around the Azure AD, and if there's a way to like kind of globally disable user consent via the admin. Matt, are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want
Sorry,
to
I was typing an answer to a question.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I will get to Russell's question about SSO versus MSO in a second, but I can provide a little bit of context here. So this question, Azure AD provides a way to disable user consent. Entirely. To always require admin consent for all applications without resorting to this option. Is there a way to grant administrator consent on behalf of your organization's users to an app, and in doing so, entirely bypass the user consent flow for a smoother first use experience? So I actually kind of want to break this down. There's a couple of interesting questions inside here. The first thing is, yes, there is a way for an admin to disable end user consent. There's also some very great documentation on the Microsoft Identity documentation for Azure Active Directory around consent that we don't have specific information on the Office side, but I would recommend looking at that because there are a lot of different parts of how an end user can consent. Whether or not an end user can consent to specific scopes, whether or not an end user can consent to anything. So there's a couple different scenarios here that you need to be aware of. And again, the right place to learn about those scenarios is going to be the identity documentation. However, coming to our side here, the place of administrator consent, there are multiple places where you can go and do administrator consent. So there is the single sign-on piece of our add-in infrastructure. And if you use single sign-on with your add-in and you declare it in your manifest and your add-in is centrally deployed, the admin will be asked to consent to the permissions that are listed inside of your manifest as part of that centralized deployment. And actually, the admin won't be able to deploy the add-in until they do that consent. So that's one way to get past the, hey, I really don't want my users to see a consent screen. There are other ways to do the same thing, again, through the Azure portal, and that's in the documentation on, I think that link actually points to some of that documentation in the answer, because I wrote it, so I know it points to that. But there are multiple ways to grant tenant-wide admin consent inside the portal, as well as through APIs. So you can also guide admins to that experience. So there are multiple ways to achieve this, and it definitely can enable a first use experience. But yeah, so I hope that kind of answers the two separations there. There is a way to get through consent on the admin side, and there is a way that admins can turn off consent for end users separately. And those aren't necessarily related, but they are important, and there are a lot of different flavors, again, of how an admin can control the way that their users are allowed to or not allowed to consent to an app. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Matt. That was very clear. All right. The other question we had come in was around using Microsoft Outlook policy tips in conjunction with REST. And yeah, we're looking into this right now. There's a detailed post on Stack Overflow. Our team is looking into this to provide a thorough and accurate answer. Just left this in here to remind that we will post the answers to all these questions and all the questions that have come in during the chat on the follow-up blog post. We'll provide links to that blog post in the chat as well. And that you please reach out to us on Stack Overflow or GitHub or the various endpoints you'll see on in the next couple slides with your questions, with your feature requests, your concerns, anything. We're listening. We want to know what'll make you successful add-in developers. So that's it for the call today. So if you're tuning in, trying to get a feel for what's up with the Office platform and Office add-ins, I'd encourage you to then go to our Office add-in documentation and try out our tutorials and quick starts. You can get a fully working add-in within 5 minutes. The quick starts, good way to kind of test out and get your feet wet with the code. If you're looking to just automate Excel tasks, check out Office Scripts. That's our online code light solution for automating Excel and integrating with Power Automate. We have a bunch of resources for you out there. You can sign up for the developer platform, Microsoft 365 developer platform, to get an M365 tenant, start testing out your add-ins. You can use ScriptLab, which is a nice tool for testing out the JavaScript APIs of add-ins, and of course our all-encompassing documentation. If you have any questions, reach out to us on GitHub, on Stack, through Office itself, or through M365 Tech Community. And this call is part of the whole host of M365 developer calls. So if you're looking to get in on the other parts of the developer platform, we have calls for identity, adaptive cards, SharePoint, all of these stuff. Just follow the links here. We'll paste all these summary links again in the follow-up blog post, and we'll paste the slides there as well. And then, yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. Some of us will stick around in the call chat to finish up answering questions, but the next call will be on February 9th at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard. These calls are always the second Wednesday of the month. And you can follow us on Twitter to get a heads up of the agenda, or you can subscribe on YouTube and see the summary of the call afterwards and the different sections broken out. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone.